Hi everybody, welcome back. Today we are looking at ancient Greece and we will be creating our own Acropolises out of tea boxes. The ancient Greeks can take credit for foundations of Western civilization, architecturally, philosophically, entertainment-wise, and through mathematics as well as government. I wanted to introduce to you 3 different time periods that I think are important to look at: the Archaic period, the Classical period, and the Hellenistic period. The Archaic period, meaning old, was a time when a lot of things were coming into development, and actually the Olympics took place during this time. It was also a time when Pythagoras was developing a lot of geometric principles that we use today. The classical period was kind of like the period of enlightenment for the ancient Greeks. It was a time where art forms of all kind were being developed and human beings were kind of doing things that had never been done before in such a refined way. If you know about Sophocles and the plays, they are still performed today. We look at Plato's philosophical teachings that are still read in classrooms as well today. The Hellenistic period is sort of the conclusion of the Greek civilization. It's the time period between Alexander the Great's death and the rise of the Roman Empire. Architecturally, Greeks were known for their columns. Columns kind of made things look much more important. So today we see them in banks, libraries, museums, and government offices. And there are 3 different types of columns, which they called order. A good example of how columns were used were on buildings called Acropolises. Now, this was kind of like a capitol building that sat on the top of a hill like a fortress. The first step is to draw a large triangle around the front of your tea box or whatever long side there is. and leave about a ½ inch around the border. Now when you're cutting out the shape, you might want to just make one hole. Just try to keep this shape as intact as you can without cutting into it too much. But I like to poke a hole so that I can kind of work around that hole. So I hold onto this edge and then poke the hole and cut around like that. Okay, so I've cut out my rectangle. Let's see where that hole was. And I kept it kind of in shape that it should be. Next, I'm going to flip the box over and trace that shape just so that they're the same on both sides, and repeat that process. Should look something like this. So this is going to be the sides, and I'll talk about the columns in a little bit. The front is going to be the small part of your T box right here. So this is going to be the front of your Acropolis right here. Okay, so next I am going to fold this in half, one of the rectangles that I have. And if you guys want to use a ruler when you do this, that would be smart too. I like to do things freehand, so I didn't. So you're going to cut this in half, and this is going to be the shape that you'll use for the front. So you should have something that looks like this. The front is cut out, and then the sides with the longer rectangles, right? I started to create the columns with scrap pieces of cardboard from the T box, but you can really use any thin cardboard or paper. And I'm going to glue these on so I'm going to tape them on so that they're fairly evenly spaced out. You can see I've secured the top and the bottom of the columns with masking tape. I chose masking tape because it's not glossy, so it's pretty easy to paint over. Again, you can decide whether you want to use a ruler or freehand. I've done it freehand, and my lines show that, but the one thing I would recommend is make sure your columns are lined up with those on the other side. So if you were inside, you could see that one column was directly lined up with the one on the other side of the building. At this point, you should have 3 sides of your building covered with columns. And then we're going to use the top of the T box for the roof. So what I did was I folded the top in half. So halfway down you're going to make a crease, and that's going to be your pediment, that triangle at the top. So the triangle should set in that, the peak of it should be right lined up with the middle column here. And then I'm going to add an extra flap there to secure the roof. Now see how when I added that extra piece, the triangle shifted over? We want to, again, make sure that triangle is directly above the middle column here. So I've got to shorten that piece, right, so it comes down further. I honestly don't know how people manage to film what they're doing while they do it, but here we go. I've painted the first layer of my Pantheon with a large brush, and you're going to want to do probably a couple of layers no matter what paint you use, because the T box is going to show through. But while we're on the topic of painting, it's important to always kind of go the same direction. So pick a direction you want to go with your paintbrush and use the end of the paintbrush. And make smaller strokes one way. So whether it's horizontally or vertically, just pick one direction to go. And then with sometimes small areas, I like to pat in the paint. If you can't get it in like little crevices, you can always just pat the paint in like that at the end of the brush.